Joining us now is OjyOkpe, which story is trending around the world. Hello, Jinx.
Good morning, Dr.
Very high spirits.
I am, actually.
Because you have been... Okay.
I love it when he does that. Okay. Now we know. I'm just happy to see my powerful woman back.
Let me know review.
Doctor. No, I feel better because my leg has healed. How about that? Good morning, Rufai. How are you? How are you, Rufai?
So
perfect.
Finally.
Well, all right. Good morning to you, viewers. Here are some of the stories that are trending across the globe. In the United States, Twitter and the company's CEO, Elon Musk, have been accused by a former human resources boss at the company of failing to pay roughly $500 million in severance pay owed to former members of staff of Twitter. The complaint says Elon Musk knew about the severance plan before he sacked thousands of staff. It is the latest of multiple lawsuits filed against the company over the mass firings that followed Musk's purchase of Twitter for $44 billion last year. In Kenya, Iran's president Ebrahim Raisi received a red carpet welcome from Kenyan President William Ruto on Wednesday as he began a three-country tour of Africa that Tehran has touted as a new beginning in relations with the continent. Raisi's trip to Africa, which will also take him to Uganda and Zimbabwe, is the first by an Iranian president in more than a decade and represents a bid to diversify economic ties in the face of crippling U.S. sanctions. In Nigeria, Vice President Kashim Shettima received a delegation from the United Nations at the Aso Rock Villa in Abuja on Wednesday, including Nobel laureate and UN Messenger of Peace, Malala Yousafzai. The delegation was led by Amina Mohammed, UN Deputy Secretary General and Chair of the United Nations Sustainable Development Group. The visit by the UN delegation is to foster relations on promoting girl-child education and gender empowerment. Malala Yousafzai, who is visiting Nigeria for the third time, commended the Nigerian government for its efforts in observing progress in the areas of gender equity and education of girls across the country.
In Nigeria, I'm here because girls' education is important here. It will determine the future of Nigeria. So I'm here because I want to bring attention to those issues.
Here are the nominees for Outstanding Talk Series.
Finally, on our entertainment, nominations for the 75th Annual Emmy Awards were unveiled on Wednesday, and comedy drama Succession, which also led the pack of nominees in 2022, dominated the roster again, with 22 nominations in total for its final season. The announcement was hosted by Yvette Nicole Brown and Frank Sherma, who chairs the Television Academy.
And of course, congratulations to all the nominees for this year's Emmy Award.
Well, let's begin what's trending with reactions trailing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's request to the National Assembly for the approval of 500 billion naira in order to allow the federal government to provide palliatives and to cushion the effects of petrol subsidy removal on Nigerians. While Tinubu's request was contained in a letter sent to the National Assembly, the president said in the letter that the money will be sourced from the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Act of 819.5 billion naira. Well, on Thursday, the president appealed for more patience from Nigerians during a meeting with 18 governors who were his colleagues in the class of 1999 and promised that the government will increase its efforts and speed up the resources to ensure a foolproof social security structure that will not be compromised, especially through the cash transfer scheme.
I understand people are suffering. Yes, there can be no childbirth without the pain. To benefit the largest number of people in the country and not a few smugglers and exploiters, the palliative is coming. And doing the arithmetic. want even the cash transfers to fall into wrong hands. So please, help persuade them.
All right, let's take some reactions. This is from Dozier, who wrote, $800 billion collected as palliative to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal by the Buhari government. 400 billion naira saved as a result of removing subsidy. And now, 500 billion naira requested by Tinubu for subsidy palliative. This palliative. Well, Tam wrote, in a country where there are no accurate personal data, how are they going to distribute these palliatives? It's very hard to believe given the fact that the same APC government hoarded COVID-19 palliatives from the people and planned to use them to induce electoral favors. Obviously, you know that is accurate. I mean, people talked about the COVID-19 palliatives that were hoarded, and I believe, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had kind of given a signal that it will probably be through the cash transfer scheme, and people are obviously skeptical about that. I'll take another reaction from the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress. Because they have kicked against the 500 billion naira subsidy relief request. They stated that it is grossly inadequate to assuage the hardship confronting workers sequel to the petrol subsidy removal. The NLC is demanding a 300% salary increase to enable workers to cope with the challenges imposed by the deteriorating economic situation that came with the removal. Obviously, you know that NLC had asked for that 300% increase in salary for workers. And I think, that's a good start that, could help. People are not convinced that this cash transfer scheme would work.
Yes. All right, so talking about the cash transfer scheme, the truth is that the process that the government is taking is not its normal process. They have to evaluate, they have to ensure, as the president had mentioned, that the cash transfer would go to the intended as opposed to the wrong hands. Of course, we have talked about the fact that the big challenge with the process is that it's happening post the announcement. This process in a proper way ought to have been done before. Then perhaps people would have had enough time to prepare for the shocks. But this is the reality, and this is where we found ourselves. People have not had the opportunity to prepare, and people were thrown into, just poverty. Things went up by over 300% following the removal of subsidy on May 29. What we are calling for in terms of palliatives and the evaluation, because the president didn't give the details, are certain areas he must look into.
Absolutely.
The basic need of any man is food, shelter, housing, water, especially in a country like Nigeria. And what people have said is that they are not able to afford to eat. The food inflation reality in Nigeria shows that people have cut down and people have been thrown into poverty. Unfortunately, we don't have the exact numbers yet, but I'm hoping that the NBS would release just how much, the removal of subsidy has affected Nigerians. Beyond that, the tweets you read also demonstrate the trust deficit with regards to policies or announcements by government, because in the past it hasn't been well handled. So truthfully, we are watching the president to see how well he would manage this process, so that this issue, and I put this in air quotes, of the National Social Register, which has come under a lot of criticism in terms of how did they arrive at the numbers, who are the people who got these the previous cash transfers, what would be the conditions of these cash transfers, how would they measure the success of this program. These issues will not be repeated in this administration. So yes, they're having conversations, palliatives are necessary, but when would it happen, number one? Number two, how would it be? And number three, would it just be cash transfers? Because we're also looking at infrastructure.
Yes.
It's not enough to give people 5,000. I don't know how far that's going to go in terms of giving households 5,000 naira. What else is going to be there? Small businesses, we need to look at those areas. And these are the conversations we hope that will be had.
You raised a very valid point. We're looking at different areas. Before, I believe I heard you talk about the modular refineries have to be working, and all of that, the hospitals, but also the state governments. What are they doing? I know that the Rivers State Governor, Simi Fubara, unveiled free buses on Wednesday to help cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. I mean, look at that. Those are the buses there. And also on July 4th, Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum unveiled 80 luxurious buses and pickup vans to farmers to reduce the high cost of living. absolutely amazing by those two state governors. I think that is a great way to go, because really it is just the way to help with the transportation to start with. Rufai.
I mean, so it has to be a potpourri of measures. It can't just be one. And obviously, I don't want to think that 500 billion the president is requesting from the House of Assembly is the only palliative for the House of Representatives. I think there has to be a potpourri of many things. Apart from food, like I said, we can also reduce staple food, rice. I talked about beans. I talked about the tubers. I talked about tomato. I talked about modular refineries. Also talked about understanding an energy mix, use of CNG and things like that, and ensure that we also ramp up local production so at least we can hedge against cost of importation and all of that. So that's one. Another part to it is give soft loan to businesses. Businesses so that, I mean, there are many schemes in the past like UN and the likes. There's also currently a loan being reviewed. It's about, I think, the Development Bank of Nigeria loan for a couple of, the G6 geopolitical zones. That's another one. Also, the over 800 million that has been put forward by World Bank and all of that money. But I think the greatest form of subsidy is economic productivity. We are joking in Nigeria. We are not there yet. You took a story that shocked me, that says in severance package, Twitter employees that were sacked were asking for $500 million. And that thing jolted me. Do you know the size of the American economy that employees of a company can ask for $500 million in severance package? If you give that money to Nigeria now, as a country, Nigeria will lap it up, will love it. But that's just one company. And that's the size of economy we need to grow. Recently, Apple became a 3 trillion market capitalization company. Africa, with over 1.4 billion people, the GDP of Africa is $3.16 trillion. Market capitalization of Apple is $3 trillion. Africa has a long way to go. And that's why we need to develop our economy within, because economic growth with all this palliative put in place is what will really bring people out of poverty. And we have not grown and we have not done so well in a while. So I look forward to the day Nigeria will have year-on-year double-digit growth, be able to bring people truly out of poverty. Because if we do that, then all the economic problems will be greatly reduced. It's not that we're not still going to have some of them, but it will be greatly reduced. But just imagine that. Just let that ring in your head. One company wants to pay, they are charging the founder of the company to pay several people $500 million. Wow. Wow.
Dr. Avati.
Okay, a number of issues here. Let's identify the issues specifically. President Tinubu has written a letter to the National Assembly saying he wants an extraction of 500 billion naira from the 2022 Appropriation Act. In the 2022 Appropriation Act, the provision for palliatives is 819.56 billion. So there is already an appropriation in place. Now he's asking for permission to extract that to provide palliatives for Nigerians, in line with his promise to the class of 99 governors, his classmates, who met with him, and he told them, well, he knows that people are feeling the pinch because you can't have childbirth without pain. Well, we have two women here. People can attest to that. What happens in the process of childbirth?
Yeah, it is painful, but it turns out beautiful at the end.
But you see, the way it works is that even when there is pain, 2-3 months later, the pain disappears. The woman is pregnant again. But what we expect, what we
I knew it was going there.
No.
I knew it was going there.
What the president is just saying that even when you have that pain, in a matter of time, palliatives will, ease that. Now, one of the concerns that has been expressed is that we have been told that over 400 billion has been saved as a result of, fuel subsidy removal. We've been told that the IMF has promised $800 million. I don't know whether, we have received the money yet, because somebody was saying Buhari administration collected $800 million. I'm not sure that money has been released. Then the World Bank is $500 million. That's at the level of board approval. So it's not as if anybody has collected any money. So what the federal government is now trying to do under Tinubu is to put all of this together and provide palliatives. Now, my main concern is what will be the nature of the palliatives. There's not been enough clarity in terms of thinking, in terms of what they want to put on the table. And it's good that the president referred to conditional cash transfer, which is a veiled criticism of what was done under President Buhari, because the conditional cash transfer that the Buhari administration said, they did, people are still arguing about it. Who collected the money? Who is on that social register? And, all kinds of meanings, including ethnicity and religion, were read into that proposal. So this time around, one of the things that President Tinubu needs to put on the table is clarity. It's not about the money. People keep talking about the money. What exactly, is the government going to do? And in that regard, you cited the example of Borno State,
yes,
where the governor is providing luxurious buses to take farmers going to farm in air-conditioned
I love it.
luxurious buses.
I think it's so amazing.
Okay, while that speaks to, Governor Zulum's attempt to further address the crisis of banditry and terrorism in that part of the country, the question is, farmers need more than luxurious buses.
Well, they are the trucks.
They are going to get trucks. They are hiring trucks.
Exactly.
I know. 50 luxurious buses from Borno Express, 30 trucks from contractors that will be hired.
Yes.
But they need more than luxury vehicles to take them to the farm. They need security too. And he made a point that the farmers should cooperate with the soldiers. Now, these soldiers, are they going to stay with them on the farms? Because we have had stories of farmers not being able to go to the farms because they are attacked by bandits. So the larger challenge is to address the challenge of terrorism, of banditry, so that a farmer can feel safe, as our grandfathers, great-grandfathers, felt, to go to the farm. Some of them had camps in the farm. These days now, if you're a farmer in Borno State, you dare not go and sleep there. So this is the problem, because there's a connection with food supply. In what state is that? Rivers. The governor of Rivers says he has provided buses. The head of service of Rivers State was, so exorbitant. He was saying, oh, this will help civil servants. Civil servants can now, have some palliatives in terms of transportation. Please tell the governor of Rivers State that I hope he will make it clear to the head of service that these buses should not be only for civil servants, because they are the ones who are going to manage it anyway. So they should allow other people in Rivers State to benefit from whatever this offers. But at the end of the day, the bottom line here, with the example of Borno State and Rivers, is that both at the national level and the subnational level, our leaders have a responsibility to address the hardship, this childbirth pain that President Tinubu talks about. Well, he probably had stayed in the maternity ward before, so he knows that childbirth can be painful. And a lot of Nigerians are going through a lot of pain.
They're in labor at this point.
Okay. You are the expert in that regard.
Well said. Well said, guys. Well, let's take another story. Following up on the recent saga between EcoBank and the largest shareholder of FBN Holdings, Oba Otudeko, who through his affiliated company, Barbican Capital, purchased 4.8 billion shares in a cross deal worth 87.8 billion naira on July 6th. While following the acquisition, EcoBank, through its lawyers, had written a letter to FBN Holdings accusing Oba Otudeko of intentionally diverting his assets so as to frustrate the execution of a Supreme Court judgment affirming that Otudeko and his affiliated companies had owed the bank 13.5 billion naira. Well, in a rejoinder addressed to FBN Holdings dated July 10th, Honeywell Group and Otudeko, through their lawyers, stated that no judgment of monetary award has been delivered by the Supreme Court of Nigeria against Otudeko and 3 of his affiliated companies, as alleged by EcoBank. Neither were they parties to the suit covered by the Supreme Court judgment, as stated in the EcoBank letter. lawyers to Honeywell Group in the rejoinder further urged FBN Holdings to disregard all the requests made by EcoBank, which includes asking FBN Holdings to refrain from ratifying Otudeko's newly acquired shares worth 13.3%. Well, you know, as we said when we took this story, it's a developing story. I thought it was important to give, you know, the other side of the story, you know, to give some sort of balance. Rufai, I don't know if you recall, on that same day there was this circulating saying that CBN had technically suspended the shares of, you know, Barbican Limited. But you know that CBN does not have the power to do that. Shares are still trading, and I believe also the fact that we have to make sure that all of these statements that are being paraded around are accurate. I have not received the Supreme Court judgment, so I don't know what's in that judgment as we speak.
I mean, we can only put a balance forward. Yeah. There's been two narratives, the letter by EcoBank, and now this is another school of thought written by Wole Olanipekun, the lawyers for Barbican Capital and Honeywell. This is the other part, so they're saying they owe them no money. So we'll see how all of this pans out in the coming days. And like we said, this is an ongoing story, and we'll give every side a chance to air their views out. So all sides, all views on this matter.
Absolutely. Dr. Batu.
Well, the principle in law is audi alteram patem. Thou must hear the other side. Yeah. And that was why I said the last time we took this subject, it was an unfolding story, and there are likely to be many sides to it. So what has happened now, apart from the initial letter to FBN Holdings by Kunle Ogumba, counsel to EcoBank, now the affected party, you know, has now responded to say that First Bank Holdings should ignore the request by EcoBank that it should disregard the shares, the 4.8 billion shares that have been acquired by Barbican, and that these, shares must not be approved by First Bank Holdings. So that is the main matter. Now, if you look at the response by Wole Olanipekun, to the petition by Kunle Ogumba and Associates, now there is very critical issues there. They say, one, that there was nothing like 13.5 billion in the matter between three companies, Anchorage Securities and others. And that two, they also raised the issue that the court did not, the Supreme Court did not award any penalty against Anchorage Securities and others. They said that Honeywell Group was not a party to that case. There were three parties to that case: Anchorage Securities, Siloam Group, and Honeywell Flour Mills, as different from Honeywell Group. Barbican was not even mentioned at all. So they even went as far as attacking Kunle Ogumba and Associates and saying that Kunle Ogumba and Associates, if I lost his sonship, they claim, on the basis of matters arising from that particular case. Now, take a look at the Supreme Court ruling, which was in January 2023. A panel of 5 judges, and the lead judgment was provided by Justice Akumaye Agim, Justice Akumaye Emmanuel Agim. Now, very robust ruling from the Supreme Court in that particular case. I took time to quickly go through it. It raises very serious cases, matters about contract privity, particularly of contract, which is one of the issues raised by Wole Olanipekun, about extopel, which, Justice Agim dwelt on, consistently, about jurisdiction, about local standard. Okay, we don't need to go onto all those details in order not to bore people. But what is the holding in that particular case? Now, certain reliefs that were given by the Court of Appeal were retained. Certain other reliefs that were given to the other party, to the appellants. In this case, is Anchorage Securities and others that were the appellants. Now, the court pointed out that the matter here is 5.5 billion. And all that controversy about, the respondents in the matter saying that there was an agreement to pay 3.5 billion, and that they had paid the 3.5, and that there was an agreement in 2013 on the basis of which they had no obligations anymore to EcoBank. But the court ruled and said, no, that agreement, there was no consensus added them. A meeting of minds, that's what it means in layman's language, on that particular score. And that agreement that Anchorage Securities and others are referring to cannot stand. So that's the gravamen of that ruling. And there's no 13.5 billion existing anywhere. Yeah, so there are matters, that they can still talk about and all of that. And that's why people who have not looked at the matter should not jump into any conclusions. Although in that particular matter, I think a cost, of maybe 3 million naira was awarded against the respondents or so. I don't quite remember who had a cost awarded against him. But the issue here now is about boardroom politics. It's about the position of law and whether indeed the fact that the Supreme Court having spoken on the matter would prevail. Because the Supreme Court, Justice Agin was very clear. Once the Supreme Court has spoken, it will amount to a frivolous effort to reopen the matter again. So let's watch and see.
Yes, absolutely. I believe that there is breaking news. Dr. Abati, if you can take that breaking news.
A Federal Capital Territory High Court has ordered the Department of State Services, DSS, to charge Godwin Emefiele, suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to court if they have criminal allegations against him. The presiding judge, Justice Amza Muazu, also ruled that Emefiele should be released on bail if he is not taken to a competent court within 1 week. President Bola Tinubu had on June 9 suspended Emefiele as CBN governor. The president also asked him to transfer his responsibilities to Folashodun Adebisi Shonubi, Deputy Governor, Operations Directorate. Since then, Emefiele has been in the custody of the DSS. Breaking news. Okay, Ojinika, back to you.
Okay, that's a great breaking news. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to chat on this story. I'd like to thank you all for your great analysis on what's trending today. Well, that's all I have for you on what's trending today. I'll see you all tomorrow.